Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shekalim Daf Dalid. We begin with the Mishnah, which begins at the bottom of Daf Gimel. It discusses the halacha about people that are not obligated in the mitzvah of Machzas Shekel when we are allowed to accept from them. This will bring us into the discussion of what items we are allowed to accept from Ovdei Avodah Zarah and Goyim. And the Gemara will discuss that at length, including a lengthy machlokes on the subject of what we accept from them and what we do not. The Mishnah also teaches us the halacha of the kalbon, which is an extra amount that was added to the Machzas Shekel, possibly in certain circumstances. The Gemara will discuss the basic machlokes of when you have to give a kalbon and when you do not. So first of all, let's begin with the Mishnah. The Mishnah refers to two groups of people as far as the obligation to bring the Machzas Shekel. So there is the group of women, avadim, and children. They are not obligated to bring the Machzas Shekel, and therefore we do not take a mashkon from them. We don't want to take a collateral to force them to give it. However, if they bring the Machzas Shekel, we do accept it from them. However, a nachri and a kusi, that's an Oved Avodah Zarah, and a kusi are people that were transplanted into Eretz Yisrael by the Assyrian king when he exiled the 10 Shvatim. He brought another nation in and he placed them in the Shomron. Those people stayed there. They did not convert to Judaism on their own. They converted when they were attacked by hordes of lions. And there's a machlokes whether they count as Jews or not, whether their conversion based on the fear of the lions was sincere or not. The Gemara will discuss who our Mishnah is holding like. Is it assuming that they are sincere converts or not sincere converts? But here so far it lumps the kusi together with the nachri, with the Oved Avodah Zarah. And it says we do not accept shkalim from them, not from the nachri and not from the kusi. And then it continues further and says actually we don't accept anything from them except for karbonos that they are allowed to volunteer. That means any carbon that you're allowed to be nider v'nidev, that is you can decide on your own to donate a carbon. So the Oved Avodah Zarah are allowed to give those karbonos as well. Anything which is obligatory, they're not allowed to give. So therefore, a carbon chatas, they're not allowed to give. A carbon asham, they're not allowed to give. If they decide that they did an avera, either an avera that applies to the bnei noach or doesn't apply to bnei noach, they can't give a chatas or asham for that. Zavim, zavos, yoldos, all these karbanos that are given for various forms of tumah and birth, you cannot have a nachri decide on his own he wants to give these. We will not accept it. Now, already you see this. The Mishnah quotes a pasuk when Ezra brought Klal Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael and they were rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash. The Kusim or the Nachrim came and they wanted to help. They wanted to give some supplies or money to help with the rebuilding, but Ezra rejected them and he said, not you and us together are going to build this house, we're going to build it ourselves. And that is a source that we do not accept donations from Nachrim for many different things. The Gemara will discuss that at length. Okay, now the Gemara goes to the halacha of the kalbon. Now, kalbon is a small coin, very low value coin, that was added to the Machzas Shekel, to the half shekel that was brought. Now, what is the reason for adding the kalbon? So the Gemara and the Mishnah discuss a machlokes between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Meir about it. Rabbi Meir's opinion is that there was a mitzvah d'oraisa to bring the kalbon. Part of the Machzas Shekel was you also had to add an extra amount, and that is because any coin may get devalued and it could rub away. Some of the silver could disappear, the weight could go down. In order to make sure that you qualify to the full size Machzas Shekel, you have to add an extra coin to whatever half shekel coin you're using. Now, there's another reason, and that is as follows. This is the opinion of the Tanna Kama, which Rabbi Meir also possibly holds as an additional reason, and sometimes applies that you should have to bring a second kalbon actually. And that is that the value of the half shekel coin goes up during the Machzas Shekel season, and that's because it's in high demand, and people are willing to pay a little bit more for it. And therefore, it's worth slightly more than half of a full shekel coin, because it's in high demand. That denomination coin is in high demand. Therefore, if you're going to go to a money changer and you're going to, let's say, give him a full shekel coin and take back 2 half shekel coins, you're going to have to pay him a little bit more, because it's worth a little bit more than half of a shekel. A half shekel coin is worth slightly more than half a shekel. Now, therefore, if you're going to pay with any other coin other than an actual half shekel coin, you're giving slightly less value, because the half shekel coin is worth more than actually just a half of a shekel. So if you're using a half shekel coin, so you're giving the full value of a half shekel coin. If you're using a different coin to make up that value, then you got to add a little bit more than half a shekel. So if, for example, you're using 2 quarter shekalim, a quarter of a shekel is a dinar. If you're using 2 dinarim, so you got to give slightly more because you're not giving the half shekel coin. If you're giving a whole shekel and you're taking back half a shekel change, so also same thing, you're not using a half shekel coin, and therefore what you're giving is worth slightly less, you have to add a kalbon. Okay, now who is obligated in giving the kalbon? So here the Mishnah brings a number of things. Anybody who's obligated in bringing the machzis shekel, that are Levim, Yisraelim, converts, avadim that are freed, all these people are obligated in a machzis shekel. They're obligated in adding the kalbon as well in situations in which it applies, each according to his own opinion. Now, somebody who we accept their machzis shekel but they're not obligated to get it, such as kohanim, women, avadim, and children, then we will not force them to give the kalbon because they don't even have to give the half a shekel altogether. Now, an additional rule is that somebody who gives a machzis shekel for somebody else as a gift, he doesn't have to give the kalbon for that. Now, that's only true if you give the machzis shekel for somebody else as a gift. What if you pay it for him and he's going to pay you back? That means that it's a loan. So there is an obligation of a kalbon. But here you have a difference between Rabbi Meir and the Tanna Kama's opinion as to how much you have to give. So let's say you give a full shekel, and half of it is for you, and half of it is for somebody else, and he's going to pay you back for it. So according to the Tanna Kama, you have to give 1 kalbon just for yourself, and according to Rabbi Meir, you have to give 2 kalbonos for each. The Gemara will explain how exactly that machlokes works out. Okay, Mishnah also says if you, however, give a kalbon for yourself and for a kohen, or for a woman, or for an eved, for a katan, all those people are not obligated in the kalbon, then you definitely don't have to give a kalbon for them, and possibly don't have to give any kalbon at all. Now, last halacha, the Mishnah says, is that a kalbon has an inverse relationship with meiser behema in the case of a situation where 2 brothers inherited an estate, and they're giving their kalbon from the estate. So the halacha works as follows. If they're obligated in meiser behema, they're not obligated in kalbon. If they're obligated in kalbon, they're not obligated in meiser behema. The Gemara will explain that it depends on how their partnership in the estate works, and there's 2 ways that the partnership could be set up. In some you have to give a kalbon, in some you have to give meiser behema, but never both. The 2 are mutually exclusive, and the Gemara will get into it. The Mishnah concludes by explaining what exactly is the size of a kalbon coin. The word kalbon means kalbain, something light between, a small amount just to fill in the gap. How much is it? So the Gemara calls machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir says it's a ma'ah, and Chachamim say it's half a ma'ah. Now a ma'ah is 1/12 of a machatzis shekel, 1/12 of a half shekel. According to Rabbi Meir, therefore that's how much it is. It's 1/12 of the total half shekel. According to the Chachamim, it's half a ma, so it's 1/24 of the total half shekel. Okay, the Gemara now begins. The Gemara first of all says that we have a contradiction between our Mishnah and the previous Mishnah as to what you do with children. Do you demand a machzis shekel from them or not? And the Gemara answers like we've seen earlier. It depends if they brought 2 saros, if they brought signs of being an adult or not. We're talking about whether they're over bar mitzvah, but under 20. If they didn't bring 2 signs, then you don't. If they didn't bring 2 hairs, you don't demand machzis shekel from them. If they did, however, then you do demand it, and that's why we have a contradiction on the subject. One is referring to each case. Now the Gemara goes into the discussion of the nachri and the kusi. So as we have seen, kusi is a machlokes between Rebbe and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, whether they count as full-fledged converts or they count as non-Jews, they count as nachrim entirely. So the Gemara quotes machlokes as to how you understand our Mishnah here. Our Mishnah seems to lump kusi together with the halacha that they're not allowed to bring voluntary karbanos. It says, first of all, it says the halacha of kusi similar to an achri as far as bringing machatzis shekel, and then it goes on to saying that they're not allowed to bring obligatory karbanos, I should say. Voluntary karbanos they can bring just like an achri can, but it seems to say that they cannot bring obligatory karbanos. Now that does not fit with the opinion that they are full-fledged converts. If they're full-fledged converts, why should they not be allowed to bring obligatory karbanos like zavim and zavos and things like that? So the Gemara has two ways of explaining this. The Gemara has a Machlokes Amoraim. One way of explaining this is that this Mishnah is going with the opinion that they are not full-fledged converts. They are Nachrim, and therefore they're not allowed to bring those. The other explanation is that no, the Mishnah, when it said that that you're not allowed to bring, that there are individuals who are not allowed to bring obligatory karbanos, then it wasn't talking about kusim anymore. That part was talking about Nachrim. Before that, we were talking about Nachrim. And then we stopped talking, before that we were referring to Nachrim and Kusim when we discussed Machatzis Shekel. And then we switched to talking about only Nachrim when we discussed the fact that they cannot bring obligatory karbanos. Kusim are allowed to bring obligatory karbanos according to the opinion that they are full-fledged converts. And this Mishnah goes with that opinion. It's just not referring to Kusim anymore at that point. So Gemara says, if you read the Mishnah carefully, it doesn't seem to fit with the other opinion, because it says that they cannot bring the karbanos of Zavim and Zavos and Yoldos. What does a Nachri know about Zavim and Zavos and Yoldos? They don't have these halachas at all. They don't know anything about it. It wouldn't make sense to say that a Nachri can't bring that. It must be referring to Kusim. Kusim at least have some education as far as Jewish law. It's got to be referring to Kusim, and then therefore it's talking about Kusim, and it still says that they're not allowed to bring these karbanos. Obviously, it's going with the opinion that holds that Kusim are not true converts, and therefore they're not allowed to bring these karbanos at all. The Gemara notes that it comes out a bit strange. First, the Mishnah was referring to Nachrim and Kusim, and then it started focusing only on Kusim. Now, when it was referring to Nachrim and Kusim, the main focus was on the Nachrim. They're the ones who are really not allowed to bring Machatzis Shekel. Then it switched to Kusim, which was not the focus from before. A bit strange. The Gemara says, yeah, that's fine. We'll go with that pshat anyway. The Gemara just brings the source of the Psukim that all converts are allowed to bring a karbanos. The Gemara says it's from a pasuk. Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'yamart leim adam ki hakim mikem karban la'Hashem min abehema min ha'bakar min ha'tzayin takrivu es karbanchem. It says adam, that includes converts. When it says mikem, that excludes people that are mumrim, that do not keep Torah, they have rejected it. Okay, now the Gemara wants to go deeper into a machlokes about accepting donations from Nachrim. The Gemara has a machlokes between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. And the issue is about what donations could we possibly accept. According to Reish Lakish, never. You don't take donations at any stage. According to Rav Yochanan, there are two factors to consider. And when you have both factors combining in a positive way, the better half of both factors, then you will accept it. What are the two factors? Are we talking about when the Beis HaMikdash is being built, or are we talking about the maintenance of the Beis HaMikdash? We definitely don't want to accept anything when the Beis HaMikdash is being built, because we don't want them to get their hands in on it. We don't want them to have a part in it, and possibly use their to disrupt the construction or discourage people from being involved in it. So therefore, we will definitely not accept anything from Nachum as far as the building goes. Now, once it's already built, we don't have to worry about that. But now, are we willing to accept it or not? So the other factor is, what are they donating exactly? Is it something recognizable? A solid object, a tool, a device that they could look at it later and say, hey, I gave that? We don't want that to be there. We don't want certain things in the Beis HaMikdash to be clearly attributable to being given by an Achari. If, however, they'll just give funds, or something of value which will be translated into funds that can be used to buy something, then they won't be able to point at anything, then we would accept it. So Rav Yochanan says, in a case we have both factors positively combining, it's already built and we're just talking about upkeep, and they're giving something which you can't point to later, that we will accept from the Nachum. According to Reish Lakish, even this we won't accept from Nachum. There's no situation and we'll accept anything from Nachum besides for a carbon that they're allowed to volunteer, like a carbon Ola or a carbon Shlamim, but not anything for the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash itself. So now the Gemara brings a couple of proofs here on the two sides of this machlokes. So the Gemara, first of all, wants to say that our Mishnah itself does not fit with Rav Yochanan, because it says we don't accept anything from the Nachum. It does not differentiate. It makes no splits. So that seems to say, like Reish Lakish, we don't accept anything. So Gemara says, no, not necessarily. I could say that it doesn't split within one factor, but it would split within the other factor. Meaning, when I could either explain it that when it says that there's no difference, it means no difference between the building of the Beis HaMikdash and the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. We will not accept something that you could clearly point to. But if it was something that you could clearly point to, we would accept. Or I could say the other way, there's no difference between something you could point to and something that you can't point to. We will not accept for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. But, of course, our Mishnah would agree that you could accept it if it was just for upkeep and was already built afterwards. Okay, now the Gemara has another proof over here. The Gemara has a different Mishnah which seems to fit with Rabbi Yochanan and not Reish Lakish. What does that Mishnah say? That everybody agrees that the Goyim are allowed to give a neder or be used as a neder for giving money to the Beis Hamikdash. This is a Mishnah in Erchin, which says that there's a machlokes about whether the Goyim are allowed to give an erech, that is a specific value that the Torah lays out for an individual, whether they are allowed to give their own erech or someone else is allowed to vow to give their erech. But everybody agrees that if we just say, I want to give my market value, not my erech value, just my regular value to be sold on the market, if I want to give that amount to the Beis Hamikdash, or if somebody else says, I want to give your amount, that the Nachem are allowed to be involved in that. So how does that fit with Reish Lakish? According to Reish Lakish, there's no circumstance in which you can accept that. So when I say that's referring to a carbon oila, a carbon oila is an animal. How could somebody say that I want to give your value? What does that have to do with a carbon oila? Your value is referring to money, not anything else. So when says no, to give your value means that he heard somebody else vow a carbon. He says, I want to give like you. I want to give your value. I want to give what you gave. That's the kind of thing that he's allowed to give. And that is only referring to karbanos, voluntary karbanos, that the Nachem are allowed to give. But other than that, they're certainly not allowed to give. The Gemara now asks on Reish Lakish that if they give karbanos, they also have a set amount of nesachim to go along with it. That's wine or flour that goes with karbanos. And the halacha is that if there's extra money or extra flour or extra wine that's sent along with karbanos, you take that and you put it in a fund, and then that's used to buy klei shares. So if the goyim are going to send karbanos, then they're going to end up sending nesachim, and they're going to end up having extra money, and that extra money is going to be used to buy things. So how does it fit with Reish Lakish? You're not allowed to buy any things with that. Now, some want to say that this is a kasha even on Rabbi Yochanan because those klisharis that you're going to buy will also be something that you could point to. Others say not. But either way, we're asking how could you accept carbon ola or carbon shlamim and the nesachim to go along with it? You're going to end up using the money from the nachem to buy things klisharis in the Beis Hamikdash. So Gemara answers it's not a problem because they didn't give it as a fund to buy klei shares. They gave it for something else, and it translated into that on its own. They gave it as something different, something that was for shemayim, for kabbanis, and it ended up turning into klei shares funds on its own. Whereas this is very similar to an opinion that they're allowed to give erchin, and you can then ask how they're allowed to give erchin. How does it fit with Reish Lakish that they're allowed to give erchin? And again, that's different. That's money that they're giving for karbanos, for shemayim, and then it turns into specific purchases on their own, and therefore it's not a kasha on Reish Lakish in that extent. Now, what's Reish Lakish's source? How does he know his halacha? So he derives again from the pasuk in the Mishnah quoted, "Lo ylechem v'lanu livnais beis elikenu." You're not allowed to have anybody else. You're not allowed to have Nachem involved in the building of the Beis Hamikdash. It's not clear from there how he knows that under all circumstances, whether it's something you can point to or not, and even afterwards, but that's his source. We're trying to explain it. Now, Gemara goes further. Gemara says that of Chizkiah, son of Rav Simon, that you're also not allowed to accept anything from them for the upkeep of the stream of water that flows through the Azara, or for the walls of the city, or for the towers of the city. You're not allowed to accept from them for any of these things. And it brings a pasuk for that, V'lachem ein chelek, you have no portion in it, and therefore you're not allowed to accept anything from them. Okay, that concludes the discussion about accepting from the Nachem. The Gemara now goes into the halacha of the Kalbon. Now, as we said in the Mishnah, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim, the Tanakama, what the reason for the Kalbon is. The Gemara quotes the machlokes, and the Gemara shows how it applies. So we had seen that the machlokes specifically shows up in a case where somebody gives one whole shekel, and it's for him and for somebody else. According to the Chachamim, you have to give one Kalbon. According to Rabbi Meir, you have to give two Kalbonos there. The Gemara explains that according to Rabbi Meir, the Kalbon has to be given for each half shekel because the Torah has demanded an extra Kalbon to be given just in case your machatzis shekel is not full, if it's missing some of it. And the Rabbi Meir fills us in with a medrash that when Moshe Rabbeinu was told about the mitzvah of machatzis shekel, Hashem showed him a half shekel coin made out of fire that he took out from under the Kisei HaKavod, and he said, give this. And therefore it has to be pure and it has to be full in that exact size. And because it sometimes loses some of the silver, you have to add an extra half shekel. You have to add an extra kalbon, and that is why if one full shekel is being used, it's for two people, there's two values that have to be added, one for each half shekel value that's being given. Now, according to Chachamim, it's different. The reason is not because of the devaluing of the coin, it's because the coin has an extra demand, it has an extra value, because it's in high demand, and therefore if you would go to a money changer and want to exchange it, you would have to pay him an extra kalbon for the extra high value for the half shekel coin that you're getting from him. Therefore, the machatzas shekel has an extra value. When you're going to give a different coin to the Beis Hamikdash, you have to give the value of a kalbon to make up for the difference in value of a half shekel value and the actual half shekel coin, which is worth more because of its high demand. Now, we had a line in the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to have a machlokes now as to whether it fits into Rabbi Meir who said it or it's even the Chachamim who said it. And the line said as follows: if somebody gives a full shekel coin to the Beis Hamikdash and he takes a half shekel change, so he has to give 2 kolbonos for that. So the Gemara says, who does this fit with? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar says this is Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir says you have 2 reasons here to give a kalbon. First of all, you have the issue that you didn't give an actual half shekel coin, and therefore you have to make up the difference in value, which the Chachamim said. You have another reason, and that's that you always have to add an extra kalbon midaraisa because it may not be the full value coin. Therefore you have to give 2 kalbonis, even though all you did is give 1 half shekel, and you took back change. You gave a full shekel, and you took back change. You only paid 1 half shekel. You have reason to give 2 kolbonos, 1 for the fact you have to make up the lost value in the coin being rubbed out, and 1 to pay for the extra value of the machatzas shekel coin, which you didn't give. Now, the Gemara says that according to Rabbi Elazar, however, the Chachamim would argue, and the Chachamim would say you only have to give 1 kalbon here. They don't hold of the kalbon deraisa of Rabbi Meir. They would say you only have to give 1 kalbon because you paid 1 half shekel, and you didn't use half shekel coin, you have to make up the value. Gemara says Rav disagrees. Rav says that even the Chachamim would say here you have to give 2 kalbonos. What's the reason? Because there's 2 exchanges here. You don't pay the kalbon just for the exchange. Every time you give money to a money changer, you pay for 1 kalbon for the whole exchange, and therefore if you use 1 coin, you have to pay a kalbon for the exchange. That's what Rabbi Elazar held according to Chachamim. Rav says no. You have 2 exchanges here. Each half coin that's being given, each half coin value, you're exchanging. You're giving half coin value for the actual payment of the machatzas shekel, and you're getting back a machatzas shekel coin. So you're giving 2 half shekel values, and you're getting 2 half shekel coins from it, one that you're giving and one that they're giving back to you. You have to pay for both of them. You have to pay for the extra value of both of those. So you have to give 2 kalbonos. According to Rabbi Meir, you would have to give a 3rd kalbon, because you also have to give the one that's deraisa, that you may have lost something that got rubbed out. Now, therefore, this Mishnah, when it says you have to give 2, is going according to all opinions. According to the Chacham, you have to give 2. According to Rabbi Meir, you also have to give 2. You also have to give actually a 3rd, but it's not mentioning the 3rd, but it's mentioning 2 out of the 3, and that still fits in Rabbi Meir's opinion. The Gemara quotes an Amira that says specifically over this halacha that the Chachamim would also agree that if you give 1 coin and you take back change, you're getting the value of 2 half shekels, and therefore you have to give 2 kalbonos, 1 for each half shekel that you gave. Now the Gemara goes into the halacha of the Yorshim, the inheritors who split the estate of their father. And the Gemara says that there's 2 ways it could have possibly split, and that is, have they divided up their property so that each one owns his own half, and then they join together in a partnership, but they each own half the estate? That would be as follows. They inherited the estate of the father, they took it, they divided it, each one now has his, and then they join together in a partnership. But so each one owns half the assets and half the shares of the entire value, and they're in a partnership. If that's the situation, the halacha is that they would not have to give a meiser behema, because meiser behema only comes from animals that are owned by one individual. If they're owned in partnership, you don't have to give meiser behema. A situation like that, they would also have to give the kalbon. That means to say, if they took 1 whole shekel from the partnership and they gave it, They each own half. They're each giving their own piece, and of course that's regular giving a machatzis shekel, and they're not using a machatzis shekel coin. So according to all opinions, they have to pay the kalbon. Now, there's another way that this partnership could be formed, and that is that the estate still exists. The father's estate exists. It was never divided. It's one estate. It's like a trust that owns that estate, and each inheritor is a controller. It's like a trustee of that trust. That estate, meaning they never divided the estate. And there is one owner of the assets of the estate, and that's the estate, which owns all the assets. They each just control part of the estate. In a situation like that, they are chayiv in ma'aser behema because we do not view each animal as if it's owned by a partnership. It's not owned by partners, it's owned by the one entity, the estate. They just happen to jointly control the estate. And as far as the kalbon, the estate is giving the machatzis shekel for each of them, and therefore the estate is giving it as a gift. In a situation where the estate is giving as a gift, anything which is given as a gift, there is no obligation of kalbon. A gift is exempt from kalbon altogether, and therefore they don't have to give it if that's how they divided it. Now, the Gemara brings a machlokes amoraim, even in a situation where they divided the estate into parts and then they rejoined as a partnership, there's a machlokes whether or not it's considered to be one estate or separate estates. The Gemara says, according to Rabbi Elazar, it depends how you divided it. If you divided it up such that each one took half of all the assets, let's say they had 10 sheep, so each one took 5. They had 10 horses, each one took 5. In a situation like that, they just really split up the estate according to the initial divisions that it fell to them. They didn't do any exchanges. Each one got the piece that they got. Situation like that, it's still considered to be one estate. They didn't really change anything, and they just each took control of the estate that's rightfully theirs. In a situation like that, if they join back together, they go back to the estate. They didn't really change anything. They had the original estate fell to them. They split it up according to the normal divisions of how that estate was. Then they go back together. They go back to the estate, so they're back to one unit, and they're back to one estate, and therefore they would have the same halachas as if they never split it. They would have to bring ma'aser behema, and they would not have to bring a kalbon. When do we have a situation where we say otherwise? That's if they split it up the divisions, not each taking half. Let's say one said, you know what, I'll take all the goats, you take all the sheep. So in a situation like that, what's really happening is that there's a sale. I'm selling my half in the goats for your half in the sheep. Now, when you buy things, then the halacha of ma'aser behema comes off. You don't have to give ma'aser behema from something you bought. You only have to give ma'aser behema from something that was born into your possession. Therefore, the whole ma'aser behema halacha would come off, and even if they go join together again, it's still like they bought and sold and exchanged, and therefore that would change. Now, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, whenever they split it, even if they split it along the lines that everybody took half of everything, it's still considered like I bought my share from you and you bought your share from me. And the reason is because Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold the concept of breira. Breira says that whatever you got was originally yours. That when we split it, we have revealed all along that when the father died, these were the animals that fell to me and those were the animals that fell to you. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold to that. He says that's not what happened. What happened was that it didn't really split. And now that we divided it up, I bought your half, I bought my half from you, and you bought your half from me, and we owned it jointly before that. And therefore, it is considered to be a purchase, and in a situation of a purchase, there is no chiyuv ma'aser behema.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.